Have you ever noticed how easy it is to be excited about a new goal, but how difficult it is to become the person capable of achieving it? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about why goals make us feel better, what standards reveal, how every decision casts a vote, why successful people think differently, and ultimately, the biggest goal you'll ever pursue. And hey, if you're new here, my name is Aaron, and I help you rebuild how you see yourself so that you could stop surviving life emotionally and actually start living it. So if that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you've lived that cycle more than you care to admit. A new year arrives, a new month, maybe a birthday, and something starts to come alive inside of you. You tell yourself, this is it. Yeah, this feels different. This is the year that I finally walk out my disciplines. This is the year I lose the weight. This is the year I write the book. This is the year I finally start the business. And this is the year I step into all of my potential. So what do? We go buy the planner. Y'all, I have so many planners that I have not used. They look good though, and it feels good buying one. You write your goals. You create the vision board, you organize the calendar, you map out the strategy. And for a moment, it feels like your life is already changing. You feel hopeful, inspired, motivated, and certain. You can almost see that future version of yourself, the healthier one, the stronger version, the more confident version, the version of you that finally cracked the code. Then life happens. The alarm goes off, you hit snooze. The workout gets skipped, the old habit returns. The urgent starts to crowd the important, and little by little, the excitement begins to fade. Not because the goal wasn't important, and no, not because the dream wasn't real, but because wanting something and becoming something are two different things. Ooh. Expand, is this gonna be one of those videos? And that's where people get stuck. Some for days, some for weeks, and some for years. In fact, some people spend decades setting the same goals. Think about that. The same goals over and over again? We're still trying to lose the weight. We're still trying to save money. We're still trying to read the books, start the business, become organized, become disciplined. Still, and every year, it remains a goal? Well, in this introduction, I have to drop the first gem that the problem is every year the same goal remains because the person setting them stays the same. And here's the painful part. Your life will not get better until you get better. My life will not get better until I get better. And most people don't talk about what that does to us emotionally. They talk about the failure, the discipline, and the missed opportunities, but they rarely talk about the disappointment. The disappointment of looking at yourself year after year and realize you're still setting the same goals. You still having the same conversation with yourself. The disappointment of know that you're capable of more, but you haven't even started becoming it. The disappointment of watching your potential remain your potential. And there is a unique kind of pain that comes from becoming a spectator in your own life. There's a unique kind of pain that comes from knowing there's more inside of you, knowing that you're capable of growth, knowing that you're capable of change, and yet somehow the gap between who you want to be and who you are refuses to close. And after enough attempts, something dangerous happens. You stop trusting yourself. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, and eventually you don't believe that. You tell yourself this time will be different, but you doubt it. You make promises and then you break them again and again and again and again until eventually the goal is no longer the problem. The problem is that you've lost confidence in the person making the goal. And with that, I want to introduce you to Jake. Jake wasn't lazy. Jake wasn't careless. Jake didn't lack ambition. In fact, if you looked at his notebooks over the years, you'd probably think he was one of the most motivated people you would ever meet. He had page after page of goals, plans, dreams, strategies, vision statements, personal development books stacked sky high, podcast notes, seminar notes, business ideas. I don't know why I keep whipping myself like that. Fitness plans. Jake wasn't short on goals. The problem was every January looked remarkably similar. Every December felt remarkably familiar because the goals changed, but Jake didn't. And eventually that reality became impossible to ignore. One evening, he found himself flipping through an old notebook. And at first he laughed. You ever looked at an old notebook and laughed? I remember once as a teenager, I wrote a song about a girl. I can't do this anymore. You a teenager. So he's looking back through his notebook, he's laughing at the old him, but then he becomes quiet because the goals he had written 5 years ago looked identical to the ones that he was going to write today. Lose weight, wake up earlier, save money. Become more disciplined, build something meaningful. The words were different, but the person wasn't. And sitting there looking at those pages, Jake had a realization that hit him like a punch to the chest. His problem wasn't that he lacked goals. His problem wasn't that he lacked information. His problem wasn't even that he lacked motivation. But you see, for years, he had been trying to establish a new life without becoming a new person. And that's when everything started to change. Because many think that transformation happens when they set a better goal. The goal's not the problem. In fact, I would submit the idea to you that transformation happens not when you set a better goal, but when you ask a better question. From what do I want to achieve to who do I need to become? The two questions sound familiar, but they're as different as night and day. One focuses on outcome, the other focuses on identity. And if you're new here, this is the identity table. One focuses on achievement while the other focuses on transformation. And if there's one thing that I've learned about growth, specifically in the last 3 years, is that your life is not ultimately shaped by your goals. Your life is shaped by your standards because goals live outside of you. Standards live inside of you. Goals are destinations. Standards are identities. Goals are things you hope to accomplish. Standards are things you refuse to compromise. Can I get a witness? And who you are becoming will always be determined more by your standards than by your goals. It's the truth that most people never realize. We don't talk about that a lot. But that's the truth that changed Jake's life. Because once he understood the difference between standards and goals, he finally began to understand why he had been stuck for so long. The problem was never the destination. The problem was the person trying to get there. And that realization raises a difficult question, a question most people spend their entire lives avoiding. What if your life isn't being limited by your goals? What if your life is being limited by the standards your identity has accepted? And that's where the real conversation begins. After that night, Jake couldn't stop thinking about what he had discovered. For years, he had blamed the wrong thing. He had blamed his schedule. He had blamed his lack of time, his lack of discipline, motivation. But now he's beginning to wonder if something else had been happening all along. Something most people never notice. What if the very thing that made him feel like he was moving forward is what kept him stuck? Because the truth is, setting goals feels good, really good. And that's a part of the problem. When you sit down to write your plans for the future, something psychologically happens. You feel hopeful, energized, productive. You feel inspired and you feel like you're already making progress. You ain't done nothing yet. In a strange way, your brain rewards you for imagining a better future before you've done anything to actually create it. This is why so many people love planning. It's exciting. It's clean, it's comfortable, and there's no failure yet. No resistance, no setback or discomfort. Just possibility. And possibility feels incredible. And you could sit at your kitchen table with a notebook and envision an entirely different life. Healthier, wealthier, disciplined, confident. And for a few moments, it feels real. And that's why people become addicted to goal setting. Not because goals are bad, but because goals give us something that we crave, hope. But hope and transformation are not the same thing. And many mistake the two. They mistake excitement for growth, planning for progress, intention for action, desire for identity. And because of that, they spend years feeling like they're moving forward while remaining in the same place. You're not walking in the park, you walking on a treadmill. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to talk about change? How easy it is to announce your plans? How easy it is to imagine the future? But when we compare that to actually becoming different, things start to get a little uncomfortable. Because becoming different requires something that goals do not. It requires you to change, real change, not cosmetic change, identity change. And the identity change is expensive. It's expensive because it asks you to let go of the person you've been, the habits you defended, the excuses you've repeated, the stories you told yourself, the limitations that you've accepted, and grab a hold on to transforming through something else. Very few people want a new identity because a new identity requires confronting the old one. That's what Jake was beginning to understand. For years, he had been focused on outcomes. He wanted the weight loss. Me too, Jake. He wanted the confidence. Hey, me too, Jake. He wanted the success. Me too, Jake. He wanted the consistency and he wanted the freedom. Somebody put in the chat, me too, Jake. But he never truly examined the person trying to create these things. And that's when he noticed a pattern. Every time he set a goal, he immediately focused on what he wanted, never on who he needed to become. Think about how often we do that. Someone says, I want to lose 30 pounds. That's the goal. But they rarely ask, well, what standards does a healthy person live by? I want financial freedom. But they rarely ask, what standards govern the life of someone that is financially responsible? I want a better marriage. What standards does an extraordinary spouse refuse to compromise? The focus stays on the destination, not the identity required to reach it. And that's why so many of your goals die. Not because you lack desire, you have desire. But desire alone cannot sustain transformation. At some point, the excitement fades. At some point, motivation disappears. At some point, life gets difficult. At some point, your husband or your wife starts getting on your nerves. And when those moments arrive in our lives, we don't rise to the standard of our goals. We fall to the level of our standards. Let that sink in. Go ahead and taste that for a minute. When life gets hard, our goals don't take over. Our standards do. Oh man, our goals don't determine our decisions in difficult moments. Our standards do. Our goals don't determine our habits. Our standards do. Our goals don't determine our identity. Our standards do. Because goals are what you want, but standards are what you're willing to accept. And life will always meet us at what we're willing to accept. You'll never grow higher than your standard. That's why two people can want the same thing and get two completely different results. Both want to get healthy, but one has a standard of honoring commitment. Both want financial freedom, but one has a standard around financial spending. Both want to write a book, so one writes when they feel like it, and the other one writes because that's who they decided that they were becoming. Same goal, different standards, different futures. And that's the hidden trap. That's how we play ourselves. We spend our entire life trying to upgrade our goals. Bigger, more ambitious, more exciting, more impressive, all the while leaving our standards untouched. It's like trying to build a taller building on a same foundation. The structure eventually collapses under its own weight because your life cannot consistently outperform your standards. It can temporarily exceed them. You can have moments, flashes, but it will not permanently exceed them. And it is the permanency of it that gives you the transformation and you become the thing. In fact, sooner or later, life drifts us back to the standard that our identity believes is normal. And that's what kept happening to Jake. He did have some breakthroughs, but every one was temporary. Every burst of motivation was temporary. Every period of momentum was temporary because buried beneath all of the goals, buried beneath all of the effort remained the same identity. The same standards remained, the same beliefs remained, the same self-image remained. And eventually everything returned to what was familiar. Not because Jake wasn't capable of more, but because Jake never adjusted the thermostat. Most people treat personal growth like a thermometer. They measure where they are. But identity functions more like a thermostat. It sets the temperature. You can experience a hot streak, a breakthrough, a burst of success. That's why the greatest challenge in personal growth isn't achieving a goal. It's becoming a person for whom the goal becomes natural. A healthy person doesn't constantly fight to make healthy decisions. A disciplined person doesn't constantly negotiate with discipline. A person of integrity doesn't wake up every morning debating on whether or not they're going to keep their word. In fact, these people aren't even thinking about it because their standards settled the argument a long time ago. Their identity made the decision before the moment even arrived. And that's the realization that began changing Jake's life. Because Jake stopped asking, how do I achieve more? And started asking, well, what standards are creating the life that I currently have? And that question was both uncomfortable and freeing. Because if standards create the life you have, then changing your standards can create a different future. And that realization led Jake to an even deeper discovery. Because once you begin to examine your standards, you start to see things a little different. You see something hidden underneath them. You begin seeing what you truly believe about yourself. Because standards don't just reveal your habits, they reveal your identity. When Jake started asking himself what standards are creating the life that I currently have, he expected to find habits, but he actually found beliefs. And that surprised him because most people think standards are about behavior. Wake up earlier, work harder, be more disciplined. But behavior is only the surface. Standards live deeper than that. Beneath every standard is a belief, and beneath every belief is an identity. That's why this conversation today really isn't about goals. It's not even really about standards. I would say both of those are towards the surface. But this is really about the story that you've accepted about who you are. Because whether you realize it or not, each and every one of us live from that identity. Every day, every decision, every habit, every act, every excuse, they all come from that person. All of it is connected to a story. And the real reason this matters is because people rarely act in alignment with their goals, but they always act in alignment with their identity. A person may have a goal to get healthy, but if deep down the story they tell themselves is that they lack discipline, what you won't. Their actions will eventually reflect that belief. A person may have a goal to build a business, but if the story they tell themselves is that they're someone that always plays small, what you won't. Their actions will eventually reflect that belief. A person may have a goal to become confident, but if deep down they're telling themselves a story that they're someone that's insecure, their actions will eventually reflect that belief. Because identity is powerful. Oh, if you only knew who you were. If you only knew that there was greatness on the inside of you. If you only knew that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. Your identity pulls behavior toward itself. It's like gravity. And you can fight it for a while. You can override it temporarily. You can force yourself to act different for a few days. But eventually your behavior returns to whatever your identity feels is true. And that's why so many people experience temporary success. They change behavior. They don't change identity. They change actions, but they never change beliefs. They change routines. They don't change their self-image. Because of that, like gravity, the old identity pulls you back. And that's what Jake was beginning to see. For years, he had focused on outcomes. Now he was looking in the mirror, and the mirror wasn't just showing him the habits he had. The mirror was showing him belief. For example, Jake said he wanted to be healthier, but when he looked closer, he realized something. His standard really wasn't about food, and no, it wasn't really about exercise. His standard was connected to a belief that comfort was more important than growth. And not consciously, he would have never said this out loud, but his actions revealed it because every time comfort appeared, he retreated. Every time something became difficult, he negotiated. Every time growth required sacrifice, comfort won. The standard revealed the belief, and the belief revealed the identity. And that realization hit hard because suddenly Jake could no longer blame a lack of information. He couldn't blame bad luck. He couldn't blame the wrong strategy. His issue was not knowledge. The issue was identity. And once you see that, you see it everywhere. Do you see what's happening? The standard becomes a mirror, and the mirror reveals the identity. And not the identity you talk about, the identity you actually live from. And that's where things get uncomfortable. And many spend their lives trying to change their circumstances. But very few people examine the identity that created the circumstances. And if everything that I've said so far is true, then that means that changing your life is going to require more than you changing your goals. It's going to require changing the story you've accepted about yourself, the story you've repeated to yourself, the story you've been reinforcing every day. Because most people don't have a motivation problem. They have an identity conflict. Part of them wants one future. Part of them is still committed to an old story. And every time that story appears, your behavior follows. Not because it's true, but because it's believed. That's why personal growth becomes frustrating for so many people. In fact, maybe you've been trying to grow and you're frustrating yourself and you're tired of trying. It seems like nothing's working. About to throw in the towel. I'm over this. And if that's you, I want to ask you this question. Is it possible that you're trying to build a new life while protecting an old identity? Is it possible that you're trying to produce different results while preserving the same self-image? And you're starting to realize that eventually those two collide. Identity always wins until it's challenged and until it's replaced. Until you decide that the old story no longer gets to define you. That's where real transformation begins. Not when your habits change, not when your goals change, not when your circumstances change, when your identity, the way you see yourself, changes. When you stop asking, what do I want? And you start asking, who do I believe that I am? That answer is shaping far more of your life than you realize. And once Jake understood that, he made another discovery. A discovery that changed the way he viewed every decision that he made. He realized that every action, no matter how small, was reinforcing an identity. Every choice was casting a vote. Every habit was strengthening a belief. Every day he was becoming someone, whether he realized it or not. And that realization led to one of the most powerful truths about growth. You're not just building habits, you're building yourself. And once you understand that, you start treating every decision you make different because every decision becomes a vote for who you're becoming. When Jake realized his standards were revealing his identity, something else became impossible to ignore. He wasn't just living life, he was creating himself. Every day, through every choice, action, and excuse. Through it all, he was becoming someone, and so are you. The truth is, many think transformation happens in dramatic moments. The breakthrough, the promotion, the launch, the achievement. I made it, woo! But that's rarely how transformation works. Transformation happens quietly. It's happening right now. In the moments that no one applauds, in the moments that nobody notices, moments that never get posted online, moments when you're standing at a crossroads between who you are and who you're becoming. And in those moments, you cast a vote, not towards your goals, but towards your identity. When the alarm goes off and you get out of bed, you're casting a vote. When you keep your word after motivation disappears, you're casting a vote. When you choose discipline over comfort, you're casting a vote. When you have the difficult conversation that you've been avoiding, you're casting a vote. And every vote in life strengthens your identity. The challenge is that most people underestimate the power of small decisions. They think transformation requires massive action. It does not. In fact, identities are rarely built that way. They're built one vote at a time. Imagine standing in front of a giant wall. You place one brick, nothing changes. You place another brick, still nothing changes. Another brick, another brick, another brick. For a long time, it's going to look like you're not really making progress at all. Then one day you'll step back and realize that you've built something substantial. Identity works the same way. Every action is a brick. Every standard, another brick. Every decision, another brick. In fact, the person that you'll become 5 years from now is being built right now. Brick by brick, vote by vote. That's what Jake finally understood. His life wasn't changing because his identity wasn't changing. And his identity wasn't changing because his votes weren't changing. He wanted discipline, but he would vote for comfort. He wanted confidence, but he would vote for avoidance. He wanted growth, Vote for familiarity. The future he wanted and the identity that he kept reinforcing, they didn't match. That's why you're stuck. And you think you need bigger goals. Is it possible that what you actually need is different votes? Because every action answers a question. Who are you becoming? And I want you to catch this gem. Your identity is simply the accumulation of the votes you cast. Promises you've kept, the promises you've broken, the standards you live by, the ones you've ignored. And once Jake understood that, he stopped waiting for motivation, stopped waiting for the perfect moment. He stopped waiting to feel different. And instead, he started casting votes for the person he wanted to become. So the goal was never to achieve something. The goal was to become someone. Most people spend their lives trying to achieve results. Successful people spend their lives becoming the person who naturally produces the results. It's a very different way of living. While most ask, how do I get motivated? The transformed ask, who am I becoming? While most ask, how do I achieve the goal? The transformed ask, what standards would someone achieving this goal live by? And this is where everything changes, because people often assume that highly disciplined people are somehow different. Oh yeah, they're different. They're built different. They're built brick by brick, vote by vote. It's not more motivation, more willpower, more self-control that they have. The difference is often much simpler. They've established standards that make certain behaviors non-negotiable. Think about someone who brushes their teeth every day. They don't wake up and debate whether or not they're gonna do it. They don't wait for motivation. They don't need Les Brown to give them a motivational speech. That's my guy. But why? Because it's their identity. It's who they are. Now imagine bringing that same level of certainty to different areas in life. Imagine becoming the type of person who simply doesn't break promises. It's below my standard. I just don't do it. Oh, I don't negotiate with excuses. It's below my standard. I just don't do it. Oh, I don't abandon growth when discomfort appears. That would be below my standard and I just don't do it. I show up regardless of how I feel because being moved by my feelings is substandard. It's just not me anymore. That's the power of standards. They remove negotiation. And negotiation is where most dreams die. Because every time you negotiate with your standards, you're weakening your identity. You're telling yourself, maybe this isn't who I really am. But every time you honor your standards, you're strengthening your identity. You're saying to yourself, I am, so I must. That's why Jake stopped focusing on outcomes. He stopped obsessing over the finish line. Instead, he became more obsessed with becoming. Not becoming successful, becoming disciplined. Not becoming wealthy, becoming responsible. Not becoming confident, becoming courageous. Because he realized that results are not the prize, the person is. The achievement is temporary, the person remains. The goal eventually ends, but the identity stays. And once you understand that, you stop chasing outcomes. You start building yourself. Because the life you want is always hidden behind the person that you need to become. And that realization changes the entire conversation. Imagine you're at the end of your life, not in a morbid way, but in an honest way. You're looking back, you're reflecting, you're thinking through the years that you've lived, the opportunities you've taken, the challenges you've faced, the dreams you pursued. Now imagine you're looking back at two versions of your life. In version one, you achieved some goals, missed others, won some battles, lost some battles, experienced success, experienced failure. In other words, you lived a normal human life. But in version 2, something else happened. You became everything you were capable of becoming. You fulfilled the very purpose and the reason that you were put here in the first place. You weren't perfect, you weren't flawless, you weren't extraordinary by the world's standards, but you were fully developed, fully stretched, fully grown. You became the strongest version of yourself. Which version matters more? Because eventually every goal ends. Eventually the weight is lost. The business is built. Eventually the book is written and the promotion is earned. Eventually the milestone is reached. And then what? Life keeps moving. New goals appear, new mountains appear, new challenges arise. The goal was never about the destination. The goals were the vehicle. The real objective was becoming. The real objective was growth. It was transformation. The real objective was allowing the pursuit to shape the person. That's why life is not ultimately determined by your goals. It's determined by your standards. Every standard you accept is shaping someone. Every habit is shaping someone. Every decision is shaping someone. Every vote shaping someone. But the question is, who? One day your future won't simply be the result of the goals you pursued. It will be a result of the person you became. And the beautiful thing is transformation doesn't have to start tomorrow. It can start right now. One decision, one vote, one standard. Always remember that growth is a journey. It's not a destination. I'm in it with you. I will see you